thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you, Professor Sabri Öz, inviting me and having me here. And also, I would like to welcome to all our guest speakers and audience. Thank you very much for your contribution to this Spring Conference. As the moderator told, I would like to talk about the PPP, public-private partnership, and its economic effects and impacts on economic indicators. Actually, I am a professor at Istanbul Commerce University, and also I am the chairman of World Association of PPP Practitioners and CIS chapter. So I am working on some PPP projects. Actually, I am working on the PPP projects abroad, not in Turkey. So I have a wide experience in developing PPP projects in the world. So I would like to start what is a PPP, what's public-private partnerships, and how we can use the PPP as a tool of economic impact. Sorry. Okay. Yes, PPP is an arrangement where the private sector supplies infrastructure assets and service that traditionally have been provided by government. So we are talking about the private finance and how private finance can be used for government services, for public services, rather than the public procurement and the government itself. PPP contracts stress long-term service delivery rather than the asset creation. Services can be provided to the government or directly to the final consumer. So it's a very slightly different that the PPP and the traditional procurements that the PPPs, I mean the private finance, creates a service delivery, not the fixed asset of the government. So this is very important because we are attracting the private finance, private partners for developing, for structuring services and operation, not only the construction phase. So most of country experiences suggest that the PPPs are best suited for economic infrastructure, such as highway and ports, because we have a classification of public services. The first one is the economic infrastructure, and the second one is the social infrastructure. What are the social infrastructure? Social infrastructure are the healthcare services, educational services, wastewater treatment services. Such services are the social infrastructure services. But also we have economic infrastructure such as highways and ports and energy projects. So where the government and the private partners can generate finance and revenue, and they can use those revenues for developing the services. Especially in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, those are the developed countries. They are focusing on the social infrastructure as well, because in social infrastructure, you are not focusing for the economic development, but you are focusing on the public services. But mostly in the developing countries, we are seeing that very easily. We are seeing that the developing countries are focusing on the economic infrastructure for generate revenue, more further revenues, and develop new economic impact in those countries. What are the PPPs offer significant potential benefits? Maybe we can have a quick list. Efficiency from private sector involvement, because the private sector skills are more effective, mostly more effective than the public skills. So the PPP can attract the private sector involvement and bring in efficiency to the public services. Internalize the benefits from building high quality physical assets. So because the building and the operation and the maintenance belongs to the same actually builder, so it means that they will be responsible for the service operation and they will be responsible for the maintenance. So from this perspective, so they are focusing on the construction phase as well. So it means that the public will have more internalize the benefits from the building, high quality buildings for the public services. And actually, this is the same for the maintenance as well, because when the public focused on the building of an assets, so they are not thinking about the long-term perspective. So it means that they are not thinking to maintenance costs and how we will maintain, how we'll make the maintenance for the buildings and for the assets. But in terms of PPP projects and models, the private partners will be responsible for the maintenance, and also they are focusing on the quality of the buildings to calculate, to consider, to take into consideration of the maintenance cost. Also, PPP model offers an important benefits to both public and sector, public and the private sector, like macroeconomic and regional development perspectives, predictable construction time, which is quietly important for public side, and investment budget, because most of academicians and practitioners knows that very well. Mostly the public assets and the public construction exceed the times and exceed the assumed budget. But in PPP projects, the finance and the construction phase are under the responsibilities of the private partners. So it means that we can predict the construction time and investment budget when we choose as a government, when we choose a PPP model. And development of legal infrastructure means the government, once the government choose the PPP, also they should develop a legal proper infrastructure to attract the finance, to attract the FDI, to attract the investors. So those projects also add to the government for legal infrastructure. And technology transfer and the R&D development also, it's comes with the private sector skills. Sustainability, nowadays we are talking a lot about the sustainability SDG and SDG goals of the United Nations. So those PPP projects are quite important for sustainability development and contribution to the environment, because the MDBs, multinational development banks, and the international financial associations are seeking for SDGs to finance those projects. And it's the acquisition of business culture ethics with public and international companies, which are very important, because those projects are the mega projects, means that needs a private finance. A mega project needs a private finance, and those private finance comes from the NDBs and international associations. It means both for public and private companies and local investors. So bring a culture to work, international level to work, and bring a reputation as well at the end. So under the right circumstances, PPPs can mobilize additional financing sources for infrastructure and defer payments into the future. Importantly, the private sector doesn't fund public infrastructure projects, it's only finance them. This is very important, because most of people think about that private finance is free. But you know, nothing is free for public services. So the private sector doesn't fund public sites. So, and the public infrastructure projects, those are only finance. So we have a very strong link with the finance of the PPP projects, means that it's 100% related to economic impact and economic growth of the a country, a region, or a project. The main argument in favor of PPP is that they can lead to efficiency gain in service delivery. There are many drivers of those efficiency gain in PPP, and I would like to touch all those efficiency gain. So again, I would like to stress one word, which is very important. A PPP project, a PPP model means that private finance and private partners brings an efficiency gains, which we call it as a value for money. So if we have a value for money after a PPP project, it means that it's worth a PPP project. Or if we don't have a value for money or efficiency gain, it means it doesn't work for public side to attract the private finance. So how a government reach an efficiency gain with PPP? So it means that when a government reach an efficiency gain and value for money, also it's meant for a positive impact, economic impact on a region or on a national level or a project level. So the first one is the bundling. Bundling, what is bundling? bundling of the construction, operation, and maintenance. So the government is not focusing on just on the construction, just on the operation, and just on the maintenance, but it's a bundling and leading this responsibility to a private finance and private partner. So they will be responsible from the construction, operation, and maintenance. So it means that the life cycle costs are optimized with better infrastructure quality and adequate maintenance, leading to efficiency gains. Full integration incentivizes the single party to complete each project function in a way that minimizes total cost. The latter will usually be realized when quality of service can be well defined, measured, and enforced. So just the bundling is not about the cost, but also it's about the quality of the public services, auditing the services, transparency of the services, and criticizing against the criticizing of the public side regarding the public services quality. The second one is the risk matrix is very important for PPP projects and to reach an efficiency gains and to have an economic impact. It's allocating the risk. In PPP projects, I mean the public-private partnership projects, allocating the risk is the party which is in a better position to manage it. It can reduce the project overall cost. It doesn't disappearing the risks. It doesn't transferring the risk to other side. It's just about the management of the risk. So the allocation of the risk should be the party which is in a better position to manage those public risks, to construction risk, to operation risk, to financial risk, and the other related risks. Infrastructure projects usually carry substantial risks, and therefore the benefits of managing them effectively are significant for economic impact and for efficiency gains. And the third one is by specifying outputs in a contract rather than the prescribing inputs. It incentivizes the use of innovative solutions that could lead to efficiency gains. So in PPP projects, when we compare with the public traditional procurement models, traditional procurement models, the government focused on the inputs, but in PPP projects, you should focus on the outputs. So it means that you should pay, it's a government, you should pay a guarantee, governmental guarantee or payments, a random payment to the private party, but it's based on output, not input. So when you focused on the output, it means you should focus on the quality of the services, quality of outputs, which means that it can bring an extra efficiency gain for people. And the third one is linking the payment and penalties to performance requirements. As I told, this is also very important for PPP. It's performance-based payments means and efficiency gains can be reached by the government, and it can lead an efficiency gain. As I told, most economists and practitioners agree that the main benefits of PPPs are maximizing efficiency gains. The impacts of PPP on jobs, on poverty reduction have been central in the from before the pandemic development agenda. However, the findings in the literature are less clear on those outcomes, as they seem to be linked to the provision of infrastructure services itself rather than the procurement method used in traditional procurement versus. Yeah, we are talking about a lot of things about the economic impacts of PPPs and private finance, but unfortunately, we don't have enough, we don't have quite adequate, studies on these issues. Actually, empirical studies we don't have, but luckily, the numbers of the academicians are increasing. So the academic empirical literature, I think, developing nowadays. The main valid motivation for PPP is achieving the efficiency gain in the provision of infrastructure assistance services, and the efficiency gain is normally measured by the ratio output to input, and it can be improved by producing the same output at a lower cost. So the government who prefer to PPP as a model to develop, to structure a public services, so they can calculate the inputs and the output lower cost by the ratio, which is quite important to calculate the economic impact, because calculating the economic impacts of an infrastructure project, not just on PPP, it's not an easy issue for the official bodies. But we have an example. especially in the transport sector, which are the economic infrastructure, as I told in the beginning of my speech. In the transport sector, some includes example. I can give an example with you, and a project in Brazil includes container terminals that have increased significantly the volume of traffic. So the volume of traffic increased and reduced the time needed for container handling and dispatching, which is quite important for an economic impact. So in a transport sector, for example, in a container sector, you can see it's a time saving and reducing the time, which brings an economic impact. Also in Madagascar, we have another project. It's a highway project. It's also save the time for a mobilization from point A to B. It means another economic impact. Also in Israel, we have a Isaac Rabin Trans-Israel Highway 6. Also, it's made a very effective impact on the growth of country because minimizing the time for transport. Also from Jordan, I have another example for you. The Jordan Queen Alia Airport, the number of users increased in very short time, and because of the efficiency of the Queen Alia Airport, the tourists come more to Jordan, and it's also have a very strong impact on the Jordan macroeconomic indicators. Based on another empirical analysis using time series data 95 to 2006 in 32 countries in the less developed countries, it's a World Bank study, conclude that there is a positive and significant impact of private sector participation in the coverage, quality of service, and labor productivity. From here, I would like to also come to job creation. Job creation is another very important parameters of calculation of the economic impact, and so the PPP, especially for the construction phase, the PPPs needs a very high number of people and employees. So for 3 years, for 4 years, the construction period, the PPPs are also very strong impact on the job creation. But unfortunately, for long term, we don't have enough actually studies that we can calculate the job creation really is an effective output of PPP for 20 years or 25 years. So we just need more studies. And the last one I would like to touch is the impact on PPP on poverty or income distribution. So especially it's the macroeconomic indicators, the per capita increase. Yes, there should be a calculation on the income distribution and reduction of the poverty for PPP, because most of PPP projects are the mega projects and they are focusing on the regional development. And also we should calculate on the poverty and income distribution of region that the PPP project has been done on that region. So I would like to also give some information regarding the Çanakkale Bridge in my paper. Also, I am touching on the Çanakkale Bridge. Çanakkale Bridge is one of the main important PPP projects in Turkey, which have been completed last 10 years. And it's in the Çanakkale, it's a Dardanel. And the Dardanel region is quite actually a small region in terms of Turkish population and Turkish geographical area. So just only the population is 4.4 in the region, and only the region has a 4% of the GDP from the Turkey. So it's a very quite limited area for Turkey. And the government focused on regional development purpose, and they developed these Çanakkale Bridge projects. And this region actually, like behind the wider hinterland. What's the wider hinterland? The wider hinterland of those regions is Istanbul and Izmir, which are the first two big cities and economic zones of Turkey. And when you compare the wider hinterland and this region, you can see a very, very big difference between those regions. And what is the lack of those regions? And they cannot develop as much as wider hinterland because of the lack of the proper logistics, lack of the transportation infrastructure, lack of the touristic attraction potential. So, and other side from the sectoral base, so the project, also the Çanakkale project, focused on better interaction among the provinces to region, hinterland for agriculture, industrial and service sector, as I mentioned. So normally the region has a strong potential, but last 50 years, the region has been far behind the wider hinterland. And the cost project was, the Çanakkale Bridge cost project was $3.1 billion. And the benefit of the project, which is the value for money, is an assumption for 20 years, for 12 years. 12 years is the operational phase. So in 12 years, the benefit of the project will be $14.5 billion, which is similarly 5 times the cost of the project. So, and before the project, there were very huge ferry queues, and the people should wait for sometimes more than 2 hours to across the Europe side, from the Europe side to Asian side. And now the bridge is a very potential effects on the time consuming and time saving of the logistics and the people. And major project features I would like to also share with you. And I think I can send this presentation to Sabri, Professor Sabri, and if you would like to see more details about the Çanakkale Bridge, also you can reach those information from the management. So it's a BOT project. There is a very effective traffic guarantee, which is daily 45,000 car equivalent, and concession period is for 16 years, but 4 years is construction and 12 years are the operation. And there are mostly a lot of international construction companies and financial associations involved to the projects. And the project start 2016. Actually, the awareness of the public is 2016, and now we are calculating the economic impact, comparing the economic impacts before 2016 and after the construction completed. So in our studies, you can reach also the comparison study of Çanakkale Bridge, how the bridge affected and has an impact on economic of the region before 2016 and after the construction. So as a conclusion, I don't want to take much time, but as a conclusion, our study takes a stock of recent academic literature on the empirical impact of PPPs and efficiency gain. So we would like to give what has been done in economic impact and PPP relation. The evidence shows that there is a positive and significant impact of private sector participation in access, quality of services, labor productivity, and reduction in technical losses. The magnitude of impact varies by sector and size of the projects, and with the context, especially as it's related to institutional and regulatory environment. But in our study, also, you can see some concrete, some solid outputs, how Çanakkale Bridge infrastructure projects affect the region and bring an impact, economic impact to the undeveloped region in Turkey. So I would like to stop here, and thank you very much again for this opportunity and inviting me and having me here. Thank you.
Thank you for presentation. The PPP projects, of course, have very important economic benefits, and they require careful planning. So we will also follow and monitor the benefits in social and economic sides of Turkey, the environment. Thank you very much. Does anyone has any questions?
Can I ask one?
Yes, of course.
Professor Aydın, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you for your nice presentation and effective presentation. Impressive one. I want to know whether it can be assumed, it can be accepted as a PPP or not. China has many investments on Africa. They are constructing buildings and many hospitals and also airways, etc. Is it a kind of PPP or can we think that PPP could be exported for any country? Is it right?
Thank you very much, Professor Sabri. Actually, it's a kind of PPP, yes, because it's a private finance. But in Africa, especially in Africa, especially in undeveloped countries, China is using a different model, which we call is an EPCF. What is EPC? EPC is engineering, procurement, construction. So it's a traditional method where the government pays for the services or fixed assets. But in EPCF means that the country or private partners, so-called private partners, because most of Chinese companies who are affecting in Africa, they are belongs to the China state of the China. So they are bringing Chinese national budget and they are coming with the Chinese government support. So even they are a private finance, the private actors and private partners, actually they are state-owned companies. But rather than this, their origin, when they come to invest in Africa, they use their own money. So it's not a lend, it's not a borrowing. So it means an EPCF. So they propose to the African governments or undeveloped countries government, not just on Africa, but also in other region, undeveloped countries, they propose to the governments, okay, we are bringing our finance, we are giving this finance to you as a borrow of state. And the state takes this finance and give to the company again for providing an asset or for providing a public services. It means that normally, Professor Sabri, there is a slightly difference between the PPP and EPCF because in PPP, the borrowers are the private finance. But in EPCF, the borrowers are becoming the states. So they are giving their finance, giving to the states, making them actually borrowers, and they are using their assets and their resources.
Thank you. One more single question, if I can ask, Professor Pınar. Can I ask a single one?
Yes, yes.
Can we think another question actually, independent one from that question? Can we think technological and digital transformation is in the scope of PPP? Because PPP is more than make or buy decision, more and over that kind of models. Does it include technological and digital transformation?
Exactly, Professor Sabri. Actually, this is an innovative models of PPP. So far, we focused on infrastructure, mega infrastructure like transport, energy, wastewater treatment plants, airports, ports, and bridges, highways, you know. So, but those are very crucial public services. But in the future, with the supporting of the SDGs and the United Nations and climate change, now the governments should focus on different solutions for their different services and different needs. And technology and R&D development is one of those parts because artificial intelligence, using technology in infrastructure and using technology in smart cities, in developing public services for people on the ground. So now the government doesn't have quite enough, finance to develop their technological progress. As in Turkey, in defense sector. So we have a very successful examples. Actually, the government supporting the private companies for using new technological assets for developing new products, and they are giving a buying guarantee or developing guarantee or some incentivize to develop their technological products. So it's totally agree with you. In near future, in three different sectors, we will see more and more PPP and more private finance and private actors. The first one is technology and R&D, as you mentioned. The second one is the local government, like wastewater treatment plants, solid waste water treatment plants, solid waste treatment plants, and energy development projects. And the third one is AI, artificial intelligence and smart cities.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.